Hello, church. Welcome to this week's message. My name is Henry Loke. This is God's Feeding Station. It's an honor to be with you again this week as we continue back down at the studio side today and back in the book of Isaiah. We're going to pick up where we left off, Isaiah 14, verses 4 through 11. Have you ever been around somebody who just makes life miserable? Maybe you had a bully in school, middle school, high school. Maybe you have somebody at work. Maybe it's a family member when you guys get together, or a group of friends, one of those people in there that just makes the situation tense. And then what's the feeling like? What's the feeling of relief like when they leave or when you get out of that situation? Right? We've all been there. We've all had those types of moments around people where everything is just like until they leave or you remove yourself from the situation, and then you can take a sigh of relief. Well, last time we talked about Isaiah, which was about 3 weeks ago, we talked about how God would bring the kings of Assyria and Babylon to their knees. They would face the reckoning for the things that they've done. And so today, we're going to read this poem of sorts that describes the land when the oppressor is removed. And there are 3 pictures that Isaiah gives us of this land that has experienced this relief. The first is this just general relief that fills the entire nation when the tyrant is removed. There's no more siege works at the walls, no more armies encamped outside the walls within striking distance, no more threat of starvation, of lack of water, of being conquered, of being invaded. It's all been removed. The second picture is this shock that reverberates through the land of the dead in Sheol when the realization hits that Nebuchadnezzar is just like them. Lived and died, and now he's there. He's mortal. The third picture, which we'll talk about the next time we talk about Isaiah, is this picture of heaven and the derision that is felt toward Nebuchadnezzar, toward the king of Assyria. These rulers who thought so much of themselves, but now they're reduced to being on equal footing with everyone else in death. Right? So much so that at times they're not even given proper burials. So with that, we begin in verses 4 through 8 today. You will take up this taunt against the king of Babylon. How the oppressor has ceased, the insolent fury ceased. The Lord has broken the staff of the wicked, the scepter of rulers, that struck the peoples in wrath with unceasing blows, that ruled the nations in anger and unrelenting persecution. The whole earth is at rest and quiet. They break forth into singing. The cypresses rejoice at you, the cedars of Lebanon saying, since you were laid low, no woodcutter comes up against us. There was this unrelenting oppression on the land, and it was a constant thing back then. I guess the last time current days would have felt that would have been World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, that period of time where we just seemed to go from war to war to war to war. I remember growing up I was born in 1962, so I grew up during the Vietnam War. And I just remember thinking, man, I hope this thing's over by the time I'm of draft age. That's all I could think about. And so it's this feeling of weight on your shoulders of what's going to happen next. Assyrian history tells us that Assyria went to great lengths to inflict fear and terror upon their enemies. They were masters of brutality, and word quickly spread of how cruel and treacherous they were with the punishments that they inflicted on their so-called enemies. All nations, just at the word, at the revelation, the talk, the spreading of what was happening in conquered cities was enough that the nations were cowed. And it was so bad and the weight was so heavy that the thought of coming out from under that oppression was almost too good to be true. Couldn't even think about it, couldn't even realize it because it was there all the time. But Isaiah, in his faith and relationship with God, knows that God is larger and stronger than any earthly king. He knows that this oppression by worldly kings is nothing compared to the might and glory of Almighty God. A God that would hear the cries of his people and come and break the staves and the battle works of their oppressors. Israel might have been this small nation with a small army compared to their neighboring nations. But her God was God of gods and Lord of lords. And Isaiah knew that eventually all kings and nations would bow down to him. So what he's saying here is all these things that are being experienced at, on behalf of these oppressive nations is all going to go away. And these songs and tales of drunken soldiers are going to be replaced by songs of worship of the redeemed and the saved. And these commands of kings will fall on deaf ears as they are removed from power and indeed removed from this earth. Herod was so afraid of the people celebrating his death that he gave orders to his military that upon the hour of his death, they were to go out and kill all the elders of the Jewish nation. He wanted no one to celebrate his passing from this earth. But what he failed to realize is that, and all kings and tyrants and rulers fail to realize, is that their ability and capacity to command goes away once they're gone. And at the removal of the yoke of their oppression, it's not just the people that celebrate. The whole world heaves a sigh of relief when they are removed from power and removed from this earth. I'm sure the world heaved a great sigh at the end of World War I, at the end of World War II. The nations under the thumb of rulers such as Pol Pot and Hitler and Mussolini and Stalin. I'm sure the land itself gave a great sigh of relief when those people were gone because of the oppression and the just vile way they treated their people. Right? It doesn't matter how much of an iron fist these rulers have ruled with. As I said many times, death is the great equalizer. And it matters not once they are gone. Now, some may come after them, it'd be kids or whomever, that may take up the iron fist as well. But for those individuals as well, when they die, their ability to wreak havoc on this earth is long gone. So picking it up again at verse 9, Sheol beneath is stirred up to meet you when you come. It rouses the shades to greet you. All who were world leaders of the earth. It raises from their thrones all who were kings of the nations. All of them will answer and say to you, you too have become weak as we. You have become like us. Your pomp is brought down to Sheol, the sound of your harps. Maggots are laid as a bed beneath you, and worms are your covers. Right, this scene shifts now from the world of the living to the world of the dead, to Sheol. And there is this now great realization, not necessarily by the kings that have come before, but by the peoples who have suffered under their regime. Right? This king, these rulers that have sent so many of them to their deaths, now has joined them in the land of the dead. In death, they are no different than the common folk. And this ruler may have seemed like he would never die, like he was immortal, but here he is right now, returning to the dust of the earth, just like everybody else. Right? When he died, maybe he was given a great funeral. Maybe there was great pomp and circumstance. I remember just recently the Queen of England passing away, and that was an all-day thing. And hymns were sung, and eulogies were read, and prayers were prayed. But in the land of the dead, for these people, just like everybody else, there's silence. Right? Their bodies rot away just like everybody else's, just like the poorest of the poor, covered in worms, eating away at his cold flesh. And just like the rest of us, it matters not. And this is what we need to remember when we start to put our faith in the leaders of the world today. When it comes down to it and Christ returns, all of them, President of the United States, President of Mexico, Prime Minister of England, Prime Minister of Canada, Prime Minister of Australia, leaders of the European Union, doesn't matter who they are, mayors, governors, matters not to God, because just like all of us, they too will stand before the throne of God, before the throne of judgment, will have to answer for everything that they've done.